Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com. In this video, I want to show you how to make an epic delay slash reverb throw. I was going to say delay throw, but reverb is a pretty important part of it as well. Sometimes when we're doing our delay throws, we want something that just kind of extends the line or punctuates something that's being said. But sometimes when we're doing our delay throws, we want to create this really large, expansive sense of space. And I did that in this record. It's Rotimi Make You Say, which we've been talking about this week. I'm going to play a little bit of that chorus, and then I'm going to break down the way that I approached this and got these results. All right.
Love, I take you to go meet my mother. No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody. You don't need nobody but me. You don't need nobody but me.
Okay, so what is that effect that's happening on the word body? It's pretty apparent that there's a delay throw involved, but it's also pretty apparent that there's more going on than just that, because there's a movement to it, there's a big sense of space to it. So how have I created that effect? Well, let's play the dry vocal by itself first.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
So that's the vocal. It's pretty dry. It's got a little bit of chorusing on it, but nothing else. So to create that sense of epicness, we're going to need some kind of a sense of space as well. So my first step here is actually the reverb, and I need the reverb to have this already kind of epic flow to it. So I'm going to play it with the reverb, and what I want you to do is listen to the timing of the reverb very carefully.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
If you listen carefully, you'll notice that the ah sound that's really leaning into the reverb comes a moment later than the actual phrase. It's not like it's delayed, it's more like there's almost a swell into the body. So the phrase goes from being you don't need nobody to you don't need nobody, like that. So it gets that kind of body. That bowing is part of what makes it feel like it's in a bigger space. I'm going to play it again, and then I'm going to show what it is that actually causes that to happen.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
Okay, so the control that gets that effect is the size control. When you have a reverb unit, you'll oftentimes have a control that will either say size or attack. Sometimes you get a control that says both. I'll explain that in a second. But both of these are implying the same idea. When you're in a very large space, it takes more time for the echoes to actually build up to the peak of your reverb. So if you're in a very, very tight, small space, your echoes build up really quickly and then decay. So that would be like a chamber reverb, for example, or a plate reverb. You get this very immediate onset of the reverb and then a decay. But when you're in an actual space, and it's a particularly large one, you first get your individual echoes, your early reflections, and then as they bounce more and more and more and more, you collect late reflections and they build up. That's the attack, and it works like an envelope control. So if you have a 0 attack time, you just go instantly up to the top of your reverb and then decay out. Whereas if you have some kind of a size control that's making the size bigger, or you have some kind of attack control that makes the attack slower, it's more like you get an angle in which the reverb starts to build up and then decay. So I'm going to play an example of this here. I'm going to set this to 0 attack. Now, mind you, this is convolution based, so there's going to be attack time already built into this, but this is not going to add any additional attack time. And then I'm going to slow the attack time down as much as I can.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
Slow.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
Do you notice how now that ah from body seems to come like just a moment later, like there's something slowing the overall reverb down? That's the attack. So I'm going to do it one more time, this time just on that one phrase, no body, and you'll hear it the way the reverb seems to attach to the word no. So 0 attack.
Nobody.
Slow.
Nobody.
It's not entirely dissimilar to pre-delay, but it's not quite the same either. Okay, so that creates the impression of a larger space, and that's what's built into this print of this reverb here.
Nobody.
But of course, the bigger part of this is the delay. So now I'm going to bring in the delays without the reverb, just so we can hear what the delays are doing.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody. You don't need nobody but me.
So when we hear it in solo, I think it's a little more apparent what's going on. We have actually 2 delays that are coming together. We've got one that's set to, depending on how you're counting the time, I marked it as a quarter, but it's really more like a half note. So we have this bigger half note delay, and then we have a faster quarter note delay. When the half note and the quarter note line up, they couple together, and it sounds louder. So we end up getting this effect where every even number delay is louder than all the odd number delays, but they're all also decaying. So it's body, addy, 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 addy. It's an undulating back and forth kind of a delay movement with different textures and different space, which I think is kind of neat. So the quarter or the half note, the slower delay, is pretty simple. It's got a doubler on it, and there's some EQ going on, but like overall, it's a pretty plain delay.
No, you don't need nobody.
We get no real sense of space from that. That's the same delay that I use on the verse, and in the verse, I don't have this big sense of epicness. I'm not going for that big sense of epicness. In the chorus, I wanted that, and so I brought in this second delay, and this is where the magic is really happening.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
Okay, so what's going on with this one? It sounds really far away, right? Well, in order to create a sense of epicness, we need to create something that feels like it can be far away. We need to have big distance in our front to back imaging. If everything sounds kind of tight and up close, it's going to be really hard to make it sound epic. It's not going to have that epicness because there isn't a battlefield for there to be a war on. There isn't a mountaintop for the vocal to call out over, right? So what's happening here? Okay, let's bring off the effects. So this was the initial delay that I started with, and it's a very out of phase delay, which ended up actually working to my benefit. It was kind of a happy accident. It's spread, and this is the original way I had voiced it.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
I timed the delay so that it was working the way that I wanted, but that very first echo, that very first tap that we hear was just too much. So I used a compressor to bring that very first echo down.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
Which also kind of ends up adding to that sort of undulating effect where the even number delays are louder than the odd number delays. But that wasn't part of the intention of that specifically. Okay, and then it's also just very bright. So I want to chop off some of that top end so that it's not so forward sounding.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
When I played it all together, though, it didn't really sound like there was a big space, though. It didn't feel like it was giving me that front-to-back image that I really wanted.
No, you don't need nobody. don't need nobody.
Not to say that it doesn't sound good, just that it doesn't give me the sense of front to back that I was looking for. I think in other contexts this would sound really cool. So I grabbed Dear VR music from Plugin Alliance, and this is a binaural front to back placer. So it gives you like binaural left and right, up and down, and front to back. And I'm using this to create a bigger sense of distance here.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
What I like about this plugin is that it really creates a very convincing set of localization. Like it really sounds like this is coming from farther away. So without it, it sounds like this.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
And with, it sounds like this.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
Now, one of the things about this plugin is that it collapses your dry image to mono. Remember how I was saying that this delay is like really out of phase to create that wide spread? I kind of ended up liking how that sounded when it folded into mono, because the phasiness caused comb filtering, which made it feel hollow, which in a way made it feel even farther away. If I were to do this with a delay that doesn't have any of those phase issues, it would sound like this.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
Which is not a bad sound by any stretch. It sounds great. However, there is something about the more filtered version that convinces me that this is farther away in a slightly more believable way.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
And then it all just comes together. Everything just kind of layers on top and has a really nice feel to it.
No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody.
And in the context of the record.
I take you to go meet my mother. No, you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody. You don't need nobody but me. You don't need nobody but me. I'll make you say,
I almost got carried away just listening to it. I really like this record, actually. It's Make You Say by Rotimi. Anyway, let's wrap up there. If you have any questions about anything I was just talking about, I know this is a little bit heady, a little more complicated than some of the stuff that I do, but feel free to drop something in the comment section, or if you just have any questions in general, pop on into the comment section. The low end guide, I have a guide that is designed for really bringing out the low end. So if you're struggling with low end, this is the thing to get. If you just want your low end to be a little bit better, this is the thing to get. At the top of the new year, I'm going to be pricing it at $37. It is worth that in my mind. I put a lot of effort into it. However, I also really want you guys to sign up for the WeissAdvice newsletter. So until the end of the year, if you sign up for the WeissAdvice newsletter, you will get this $37 tutorial all about the low end for free. That link is in the description, so take advantage of this for the month of December while you still can. Okay, if you like this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification. And lastly, you know what we say at WeissAdvice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.